Today I'm going to show you how you can use AWS CDK to build a serverless application and deploy into your account in AWS. So let's start. So step 1, how to install AWS CDK. It's very simple. One command, npm install with global option AWS CDK. If you already have it, it will not take very long. Otherwise, it will just update it. Installation done. Let's check the version that we have installed quickly. Now to check the version, we will use a simple version command along with CDK. It will tell us the version. We're using a latest version 2.93. Step 2, I'm going to start the project. So I'm going to show you CDK init command, or short for CDK initiate. We're going to use the sample app, so that way you can understand the different file and different structure. So you can understand the directory structure that we will be using. I will be using Python language. You can decide what's the right language for you. With this command, it will initiate my platform, and CDK init, a sample app will be downloaded, and a new template for sample application will be available for me. It will initialize a new Git repository and at the same time create a virtual environment. Pro tip, with virtual environment, this allows you to have your independent file dependencies or project dependencies. With virtual environment, you can ensure that you're not going to corrupt the other projects that you're working on, and you can have all your dependencies in one project. So let's start this virtual environment. So now I'm going to use Python 3 just to manually start my virtual environment. You have an option if you want to, because I'm using Mac, so I can simply activate my source file as well. So the other command that I could use, it's simple like this. So with this, we have activated our virtual environment. The next step, after I have activated the virtual environment, I will be installing the requirements. But before that, let's understand what the requirement means and where this will be stored. So the requirements, all these requirements will be available here. It says we have a library, a CDK library, version 2.93, as I mentioned, and the construct. And we're going to install this in this virtual environment now. So the command for installing this is simple. So this will install all the dependencies and required to run this project. So the dependency install is successful. Now let me walk you through through the directory that is created by the sample application. So the code is going to be in this folder, CDK YT demo. And this is the stack that you're going to create. A stack basically means how your infrastructure will be created. So sample application is going to create IAM, SQS, SNS, and subscription. So basically, this is the import part. When you have imported, the next part is how you're going to create it. It's very simple. You can use your programming language. So as you have imported SQS, from there you can use the IntelliSense to have .q. Then you can provide the name for the queue. Then similarly for SNS, you can provide the name here. And then if you want to add the subscription, this is the one-line command that you can use for subscription. If you want to build any unit testing will be in here. So this is similar. You will be testing the stack that is created. So you can run different properties. Like for example, the default visible timeout is 300 seconds. That's how you will be configuring your test as well. And this is the app.py. It's basically making a request to CDK app and creating the stack. The stack basically the one that you have here. Providing a name for this stack is CDK YT demo. And then app.synth, basically synthesis, is going to compile this stack that you have provided. And after compilation, it will provide you the CloudFormation template. So let's see what this looks like for this project. I'm going to make this request using this command. So command is CDK synth. So when you're running this command, it's going to generate the CloudFormation template. I am sure you're all familiar. This is a long list of all the resources and the configurations that you have to configure. It's available to you here. So you can see all these configurations are available. After you have gone through this, we can also test, run the unit test. I'm sure you know how to run the Python unit test, so I'm not going to do that. But because for this account, I'm going to run the CDK Bootstrap. CDK Bootstrap is a way to create all the default roles and the permissions in my account, so that way we can actually deploy the CDK applications later on. So the next step will be to run CDK Bootstrap. Okay, so I have completed the configuration for my account, and I'm running this CDK Bootstrap again, and it's creating the account it's deploying this Bootstrap configurations, which basically creates the resources needed to run the CDK applications. So you have to do that when you're doing this for the first time. This allows you to deploy further applications in the future. So CDK Bootstrap is successfully completed. The next step, I'm going to deploy the sample app that we have created. So let's quickly deploy this. Now it's asking me whether we are going to accept this change, as it's creating a new resource and allowing action for SQS to send the messages. If you accept this, this will deploy this. So usually you have to accept this here. So as you can see, the deployment time is 89 seconds and total time is 92.72 seconds. CDK YT demo is successfully deployed. So now quickly verify if this is actually available in console. So I'm going to show you the console. So now in the CloudFormation console, we can see that two stacks are created. One is CDK Toolkit. That's the Bootstrap stack. That includes all the resources to deploy CDK applications in this environment. And this is the one that contains the sample applications. Let's quickly take a look at the resources under this. So we should have the queue that we have seen, the SNS topic, and the metadata that we are using. So these are the resources that we have created. So this has done the job that we asked. So now let's quickly change the code, and then we can see how this will be working for our simple application of using API gateway and Lambda function, a simple GET request and simple REST API to get a resource from the Lambda function. So because we are going to create a Lambda function, so let's create a directory that will contain our Lambda function in this case. So in the root directory, go in there, create a new folder, call it Lambda. And then in the handler, you can have a simple handler like hello.py. So in this, you can put the code that you think is relevant for this. And for now, I'm just going to use a simple code just to display empty value or something like this. Like, okay, let me quickly put it there. So in the Lambda function, this is the import and then the handler that goes in there. And in this request, I'm just going to print all the requests in the logs, but what I'm going to return is the path. So you can see the path that we're going to make in the request should be returned along with the body. And this is what we are going to send. Make sense? Okay, so quickly save it. Now we have to go to the stack and change the stack definition to use this Lambda. Now for the sample application, this is nice to understand what is going on, but we don't want to use the SQS topic or queue. So I'm going to remove all of them from here. And then with this, you can see it's the unused imports. Let's remove them because we're not using them. So I have removed them. Duration is also we're not using. So I have removed all the unused imports from there. Now let's run, basically let's define a simple Lambda function. So for this, I'm just going to create a simple Lambda function. I'm going to call it my Lambda function. Okay, so we cannot use it because first we will have to import so let's try the quick fix. Okay, it's not going to work. Let's define this from here. We need to think about AWS Lambda, and then we're using this as _Lambda. So best practice when you're importing the keywords that's reserved, especially like Lambda, try to import with underscore, like underscore Lambda, underscore API gateway. That's the sort of the naming convention I usually follow. That can be really easy way to understand what is the import variable and what is your custom variable that you're using in your code. So as you can see, the errors are gone. Simple. And the runtime you can change. I don't want to use the 3.7. I will be using .python 3.11. That's the runtime that I want to use. If you don't know what runtime is basically the programming language that is used in runtime. By the Lambda function, there's a different options available like Python or JS and different other languages like Java that you can use as a runtime. I prefer Python, so I'm using Python here. So this is done. The next step, let's focus on the API gateway because we want to make this request using API gateway. Now let's import the API gateway. And now let's use that underscore API gateway to create a Lambda REST API. And we're gonna name it REST. REST endpoint. You can name it whatever makes sense to you. And then handler. In the handler, we are going to use the Lambda that we have created above. My underscore Lambda. Okay, so this is done. Just make sure always use that comma, otherwise this will run into different errors. And similarly here as well, as a best practice, always try to finish the with the comma here. Now I'm going to introduce another CDK diff command for you. So this is the another command that can help you see the differences between the previous code and the new code that you're putting in. So you can just use CDK diff. With CDK diff, you will be able to see what is removed and what is added as part of this change. So you can be sure of the change that you're putting in there. Now, as you can see, the number of stacks with differences is 1. And then you can see that we have destroyed the queue policy, subscription, and the topic. And then we are creating all these resources needed, like API gateway and the permissions needed to connect from the API gateway. So this is how it's going to look like. So now from this point onward, you can simply do CDK deploy. And this will deploy your change into the same stack that we have created earlier. And we can verify this with a console now. So as you can see, it's deployed the change and destroyed the other resources. So as you can see, the resources, the red one means it's destroyed, green one means it's added, and as in plus and minus as well. And then at the same time, you can see the deployment time. And if you want to test this endpoint that we have created, so you can test this here as well with the simple curl command. So as you can see in the curl command, it's returning hello CDK, you have hit, and then printing the path as we have put in the code. Now I'm going to show you something really useful, especially when you're building your project. Another command that you can use to expedite your deployment, which will save your time. So I'm going to change the code that we have in there. And in this code, I'm just going to print the request, and then I'm going to print the path parameters. And then in the response, I'm going to return the path parameters. So instead of returning hello CDK, you have hit item/2. I will be just returning, the path item/2. So for that, let's quickly save this change. And after that, you have this command where we will be deploying with what we call it, a faster personal deployment. This is really useful when you want to only deploy for the dev environment. So be careful not to use in production. The command is simple, CDK deploy, similar to the other, but with the option of hot swap. So this is the extra option that you have to pass. And with this, we are only going to deploy the changes that we have made in this code versus the previous version that we have deployed. So it's not going to refresh the full infrastructure, just the change. So let's see how quickly we can deploy this. So as you can see, the deployment is significantly faster than the previous version. And if I have to test this now, the same command that we were using before, and this time we are going to execute this command, and let's see the response from this. So as you can see, the previous response was different. Now we are printing the path variable options here. And in the path variable, we can see the results. And this can be used in your code where you are going to run a request, like something where you want to get request by item ID 2 or something like that. And that's really useful for the REST API. And that's the end. And thank you so much for your time. And if you like my content and if you want to leave any feedback, please leave that in the comment. And if you think that I'm adding any value to your day, please like and subscribe.